Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Let's go discover the Pantanal, a wetland paradise for birds, presented by NatHab expedition leaders Colby Brokfist and Fred Tavares. It's a pleasure to have you both with us today. Colby, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Okay, thanks, Kendall. I appreciate being here. I think some folks were maybe expecting Annie, per the usual, to be here. She wasn't able to make it, so I'm stepping in. I have to say I'm extremely excited and pleased to be here. So Fred, thank you for letting me join you. I'm a guy that guides a lot in the polar regions and in the winter time in North America and Yellowstone, and so I'm super enthused to see what some of our green trips look like. And I know we spent time on water, and we're going to focus a lot on just all the magnificently colored birds that are down in the Pantanal, which of course is a huge highlight of these trips. So Fred, thank you for having me here today. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to lead these trips and what you find personally special about them.
Hi, Colby. Hi, everybody. Thanks, NatHab, for the opportunity to talk about birds. That's one of my passions. Well, my name is Fred Tavares. I'm Brazilian. I was born in the state of Rio. I live in Southeast Brazil, and I've been guiding in the Pantanal since 1999. And I'm graduated in biology. And let's talk a little bit about this fantastic biome, the Pantanal. So, just to contextualize you, this is a map of South America. This bright green area, this represents the Pantanal. It's just for you to have an idea in terms of the size. It is about the size of the state of Utah. The state of Utah is just a little bit bigger, just like 1,000 square miles bigger than the whole Pantanal. The whole Pantanal, the Pantanal it's situated in Brazil, Bolivia, and Paraguay, but like 85% is situated in Brazil, in the Brazilian area. Pantanal, it's a good example. We can say that's like a soup plate. It's a very flat area surrounded by mountains, and all the water from the Pantanal comes from these mountains, and of course from the rain as well. And this is a very important river basin called Paraguay River Basin, and this is the largest wetland in the world. And just a quick numbers about the birds in Brazil. Brazil is the second or maybe the third country in number of birds. We have 1,900 species, a little bit more than that. Sometimes we have splits, but it's around 1,900. And Pantanal, just the Pantanal itself, has more than 650 different species of birds in the Pantanal. One very interesting thing about the Pantanal is that there are very few endemic species in the Pantanal. You can explain that because of the water cycle. So birds, animals, they are moving around looking for water, so they can occupy different habitats. But it has a huge population of every bird. So the population density is quite high in the Pantanal. Again, we can explain because of the water cycle, it brings lots and lots of food for the Pantanal. So these 4 pictures here, just to give an example, Pantanal, it's a big mosaic of different biomes. Like it has influence from the Amazon, from north, it has influence from the Savannah, from the east, and Atlantic forest from the west. So the top left picture is more to show like a grassland type. Here is a big wetland on top right, and 2 forested areas. You have the riverine or gallery forest that grows along the rivers, and some dry forest in the middle of the Pantanal, a little bit far from the rivers. Okay, so let's start talking about the grassland birds from the open field areas. One very important thing, these trees you're seeing here, they are an icon from the Brazilian grasslands. And they are there in the Pantanal, strong influence from the Brazilian savanna. They are from a genus called Tabebuia. Whenever they bloom, they lose all their leaves and they're gonna have flowers for like a week, 8, 9 days, no more than that. But it's a fantastic show when you can see them. And during Natural Habitats tour, this is the best time to look for them. That's when they are blooming.
Any one of our trips, Fred, they could expect to see those sorts of colors at some point during that season, or are there particular dates?
July, August, and September. That's the peak of the blooming of these trees. And it will depend a little bit if you are more up north in the Pantanal, more in the southern Pantanal. But definitely between July and September is the time to find these trees.
Beautiful.
So let's talk about birds. That's what you're here for. This is our first bird. It's called the greater rhea. It's an ostrich-like bird. They are related, and this is the largest Brazilian bird. It can reach like 5 feet tall. And it's for sure this is a signature bird of the savanna. Everybody, when it comes to South America, to savanna area, this is a bird you must see. It's a very interesting bird with a very interesting social behavior. This is a male displaying. Generally males, they have a harem. They are surrounded by several different females during the breeding season. And the best part of their behavior is that they copulate with several different females. They build a big nest in a tall grass area, and all the females will lay their eggs. And the male will be the one in charge to incubate and then to raise all the chicks alone without any females. So this picture, it's a male greater rhea surrounded by chicks. So it's a tough life for him.
So he's raised all of these chicks, and these chicks all belong to different females. And in the meantime, the females have just left, and he's the stay-at-home dad. He's raising all of the chicks from all those females.
Absolutely, that's what happens.
That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work.
It's quite unusual among birds. It's not very common to have males. They are the one taking care of the chicks. Not alone, at least. So our next bird, it's a red-legged Seriema. Seriema, it has its own family. There are only 2 members on this family. 2 species of Seriema. One occurs in southern part of South America, and this one you can find in Brazil. It's pretty widespread, very, very elegant bird. It's always a pleasure to see it walking around, very elegant the way it moves. And some people, some farmers, some locals, they like to keep them around their house because, like chickens, they eat all the spiders and scorpions, anything that can cause you problems. They keep the area clean. So it's a bird that commonly we see them around farms or houses in the Pantanal. Okay, next bird. This is a white woodpecker. White woodpecker is quite uncommon in Brazil, especially, I don't think this is the only species that we have white on its body, which is quite unusual for us. In North America, you have lots and lots of woodpeckers with white on their bodies. So this is quite unique for us. They live in groups. Sometimes you'll find 7, 8, even 9 different individuals. And this one with the wings open is doing like a display, it's a territorial display. When I photographed it, there was another group of white woodpeckers fighting for territory. So it's quite cool to see them just doing this very interesting display. And this is a typical woodpecker from open areas. You rarely see them in forested areas.
Fred, let's pause for a second. So you've shown us a picture of a bird that's endemic to South America, a whole family. Now we see one that has relatives in other places around the world. We get a good mix here, right? Like people are, when they come on their trip, they'll be able to see relatives of the birds that they might know from their home and see how those birds might live a little bit differently and what makes them special. But they'll also see a lot of things that are very special to South America that have no relatives, especially up here in North America, where many of our guests come from. Is that right? So we'll have this big variety of types of birds.
Absolutely right. And it includes that some of the birds, you have the same genus that occurs in South America and then occurs in North America, which is very nice to compare. Like we have flickers, it's from the same genus, a different kind of flicker, like you have your northern flicker. But we do have lots of different things to show you. But it's always good to establish this relation between families and genus that occurs in the same North and South America. It's always a good way to look at birds. And this one, just for you to have an idea, it's slightly smaller than a northern flicker. A northern flicker has about 12 inches of length, and this one have 10 to 11 inches. So just for you to understand the size of this bird. Ooh, this is a bat falcon. Lovely, lovely falcon, very, very small, extremely fast flight. They feed on insects, they feed on small birds, and they feed on bats. That's not just a any name, it's just a real name, bat falcon.
Wow.
So if you are lucky to see them hunting bats, it's quite spectacular. Because imagine bats can fly really fast and they have to be even faster. So it's a very, very, very special bird. And you rarely see them in forest areas. It's more common to see in open areas. And they like to be in the same tree. This is very interesting. Whenever you find a territory, there is a very, very good chance that you're going to spot the same individual for a while until they move around and look for a better territory. Okay, another raptor. This is called the Savannah Hawk. This is for sure. This is another signature bird of the Brazilian savanna. It's about the size of a red-tailed hawk. Pretty much the same size. I just compare. Feed on snakes, on insects, small birds, small mammals, and it has a very interesting behavior. They like to rest a lot on the ground, which is quite unusual for raptors. So it's not unusual while you're doing a safari in the Pantanal, and you look, oh, look, there's a hawk on the ground, and there it is, Savannah hawk. And they rarely perch on very tall branches. Generally, you see them about eye level, slightly higher than that. Fantastic bird to photograph. Always cooperate. They stay, they pose, and it's a lovely bird. Nice looking bird.
Very elegant, yeah.
Yes, it is. Very, very, very elegant. So this is one of the many raptors we can find in the Pantanal. This is a bird from the family called Furnariid. It's called the tortoise spine tail with this very long and spiky tail. It's a very, very attractive species. And Furnariids, they are well known for the nests they build. They have lots of skills to build their nests. They use mud, they use sticks, several things. And this is one of the members from the family. This one has a great call. And birds in the tropics, not only in the tropics, but especially in the tropics, they are very responsive to calls, to bird calls. So if you stimulate them using a playback, using the recording, this is a very responsive bird. Generally, they come pretty quickly if they are in the time to defend their territory, which happens during the breeding season mainly. It's a very special bird. That's the tortoise pinetail. And here is another beauty, another fantastic bird from the savannah. Unfortunately, this is an endangered species. It's called the long-tailed dove, ground dove. It's a pretty small one. It used to occur in all savanna areas of the country, but deforestation helped the decline of population in the last maybe 20 years. So now Pantanal definitely has the largest population, the best place to look at them. It's a very, very special species. It rarely mixes with other birds, which is quite common to have doves, different species of doves foraging together. This one likes to stay alone, apart from its pair from the same species, but generally they stay just this pair, don't mix with other birds.
Let me jump in again and ask another question here, Fred, just about the trip in general. So you've talked about birds that are easy to see, tricky to see. You've offered some tips on like how you're finding some of these special birds out there. Now we have an endangered, endemic bird. It makes it seem like some of these birds are hard to find, but correct me if I'm wrong. Like you guys, you and your colleagues that are guiding these trips, you know where to find those. All the birds that you're talking about here, Nat have guests actually have a very good chance of seeing when they're on a trip. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. So all the birds I put on this presentation here, we have very, very good to see them. It's not guaranteed, as nothing is guaranteed in terms of wildlife, but we have very, very good chance to see them. This is something important that I didn't say in the beginning. I forgot, sorry. Whenever you go there, this is not a 100%. This is not a birding trip. This is a natural history trip. We are looking for different stuff. But by far, birds, it's going to be the animal, the species that you're going to see more than any other one. So you're going to see easily in a trip with NetHab, you're going to see 130, 140 species, different species in a trip. Wow. And we are not going to be birding. Some of the species, it demands lots of time, we need to hide, but these are the species we have very, very good chance to see. And I hope we will see most of them when you come down here. And the reason I put some of the birds here, I chose them, it's because they have an interesting behavior, or they are like iconic, like the greater rhea was. It's like a bird that if you come to a certain habitat, you must see this bird. It's like going to Africa and see some of the big five and things like this in terms of birds. But we know how to find them. Okay. So let's change the habitat a little bit here. This is one of the main rivers of the northern part of the Pantanal. This is called Cuyaba River, and a small tributary called the Little Dark River. You see that the color of the water, it is slightly different. One of the tributary, it starts right in the middle of the Pantanal. And the other river, the big one, Cuyaba River, it comes up from the mountains. So the rivers that come up from the mountains, it brings lots and lots of sediment. That's why you have this color in the water that's more muddy water. It's a very, very important river. Lots of forests, home for several different species of birds and mammals as well. And it's interesting because some of the birds you see now, they tend to be more in a big river than in a smaller river. And it will depend on the species. I'll point that to you. So another fantastic raptor species, very powerful one, is called the great black hawk. This bird, it can be seen in open areas as well, but most of the time we have good chance to see them along the rivers. We used to do lots and lots of boat trips in the Pantanal, in that trip, especially when you go to look for jaguars. We used to see a lot of these guys there. They let you get very close to them, providing great photo opportunities. So there's a special bird to see. I'm sorry. They have about between 21 and 24 inches. That's the size of them. It's bigger than a red-tailed hawk, which has something like 18 or 19 inches. Just so you to have an idea. And this picture was taken, it was about to go fishing. This is a very special hawk, because in Brazil, we do have ospreys in Brazil that they migrate. They spend like a few months of the year here. It's a very special thing for us. And only other two fishing hawks, this one and this one that just caught a fish. That's a black colored hawk, pretty much with the same kind of behavior, tend to be more along river courses. You see them in marsh areas as well, around lakes, but mainly you're gonna see them around bigger rivers. So that's a very special one, black colored hawk. Another one that provides fantastic photo opportunities. The whole thing, Pantanal, it's very interesting. All the pictures that I'm showing here, I took them during some of our tours. I don't use to carry my camera all the time. Generally, whenever I'm walking and I'm not carrying my camera, mostly when we are doing safari on trucks. So just to give you an idea of the photo opportunities in the Pantanal and the quality of watching the view of the animals in the Pantanal is quite special. I don't know if they are quite used to people there in the Pantanal, so very few species, they can be shy, they will run away. Most of them, they let you get close to them as long as you respect, but it's a great place for photos. And this is a very special bird. Several people don't pay much attention on these birds. They are not exactly what I can describe as the most beautiful bird of the world, but it's a very special bird. This is a black vulture, and it's right now on this picture, it's surfing on a dead caiman that was floating down the river. It's a quite common scene to see in the Pantanal. Pantanal has a huge population of caimans, so it's quite common to see a dead one floating down the river. and they take advantage of it. They just fly, try to find a place where they can start to eat parts of this dead things. And vultures, they really attract me for several reasons. One of the reasons is the very elegant way of flying. They are amazing, amazing when they fly. They can fly really, really, really high. Sometimes they spend several minutes without moving the wings, just gliding around. It's quite spectacular. And I think the most important part is the environmental service they do for us. They like from the cleaning up crew. They are the ones in charge to keep the forests clean, all the environment clean, and sometimes even around cities. Can you imagine the world without vultures? How much time or energy we would spend to keep carcass away and things. There are some studies saying that they can avoid they can limit the speed of some disease to spread. So it's quite one of the diseases that they can control. There is a study about that, is rabies. So if you have a healthy population of vultures, some of the disease can be under control. Otherwise, they just lose the control because there are not enough animals to eat the dead things. So it's quite special. And a very, very important reason is this is the mascot of the soccer team I support in Brazil. And we are doing really well in the last 2 years. So the vulture, it's even more important now for the it's not
That
a very elegant.
Sounds like the most important right there.
Yeah, but I really like vultures, all the social service they do for us. And this is the king of the kings.
Ooh.
So this is called the king vulture. King vulture is the largest vulture we can find in Brazil. In Brazil, we have 5 different species of vulture, and this is the largest one. And it takes them about 4 years to achieve this beautiful feathers and this really beautiful appearance. So it's 4 years to reach the sexual maturity. Generally, they are the dominant vulture. Whenever you have a carcass, you can have like 10 black vultures. If just one king vulture arrives, he's the one to go first in line, always, always. And he's slightly bigger.
That patch there, Fred. What's the patch on there? I see pictures of them all the time. It seems like they're commonly missing the feathers on the chest. Is that what's going on there?
It happens during the breeding season. Several animals, not just birds, but several animals like mammals, sometimes they show some of their glands or things when they are during the breeding season. So there's this part, they just lose this, and this is part of to show how healthy or how strong they are. And even this black color they have here, like this scarf, this also disappear when they are not in the breeding season. And they are gonna get a little bit duller as well. Not so bright, the colors are not so bright. This one was right in the peak of the breeding season. It's a lovely, lovely species. Have you ever been to Central America? Central America is another good place to look for king vultures as well.
All
if
right.
anybody has been there, it's a place where it's very possible to see. Okay. So this is a Chestnut Valley guan. Guan, they belong to a family called Crassidae. That's a family of the curassows. It's probably the most famous member of this family. Again, Central America, I believe that some people have been to Costa Rica before. Costa Rica, you can see guans as well. You can see curassows, which is the most famous. And this is a Brazilian endemic species. Despite its size, it's an arboreal bird. And despite this picture as well, because I found them, when we found them, they were just going to drink water. But most of the time, they spend time in the trees, despite its size, eating fruit. And it's very interesting. It's nice to see, not so common, but possible to see. During the first trees we see in the beginning of the presentation, the yellow and the purple ones, they really like to feed on the flowers of these trees. So sometimes you have a big, big tree full of flowers and full of birds, and these big birds. So they feed on these flowers as well. Apart from other birds, they really like these flowers as well. And a very interesting thing, the genus of this bird, it's a fantastic genus. It's called Penelope. It's quite unusual, but it's a Penelope. And this is a bird that kingbirders, whenever they come to the Pantanal, this is one of the birds they really, really want to see, is the chestnut-bellied one. When I was just showing the presentation to Annie, she made me a very interesting question about hunting in Brazil. And she asked me, especially when she saw this bird, it looks like some of these game birds. In Brazil, we are not allowed to hunt. We can't hunt at all in Brazil, apart from feral animals. Like in the Pantanal, we do have feral pigs, and these are the only animals we can hunt in Brazil. So I'm sure I'm telling you, this is officially by law, which I'm sure that some people hunt them in the past and maybe still hunt them. But the population is quite stable and increasing slowly now. There is a project working with this bird. So whenever we see something that reminds a game bird, just to clarify, we can't hunt in Brazil. We do not have a hunting season or anything like that. Okay.
No Penelope hunting.
No Penelope hunting, nothing hunting.
Kingfishers, these are some of my favorite birds. Tell us about the kingfishers.
Okay, so Pantanal has 5 different species of kingfishers. This is I inverted the order here anyway. This is the second smallest species of kingfisher. This is called the green kingfisher. It's one of my favorites. We used to see them, I think, in every single time we go for a safari, we pass near water, we're gonna see this bird, a green kingfisher, or the next one, that's an Amazon kingfisher, that's bigger than a green kingfisher, also common. This is a female, it doesn't have the orange on the chest. And one nice thing about kingfishers, this picture I took with like a 300mm lens. They let you go very, very, very close to them, very, very close to them. And absolutely fascinating birds. I really like kingfishers. This is a very special one. It's called the green and rufous kingfisher. It's probably the less common kingfisher we have among these 5 ones, but also very possible to see with these bright colors. And this one tends to be more in forested areas. They don't live in the forest, but they tend to be more in near thick vegetation. They don't show up so well as the other ones, but very possible to see. And the smallest one, that's the Pygmy Kingfisher. I just took a note here just for you to compare. Pygmy Kingfisher has 5 inches. Just for you to have an idea, your belted Kingfisher has 13 inches. So it's about 1/3, almost 1/3 of the size. So it's really small. We do have our largest kingfisher is called the ringed kingfisher, which is the one on the right. I just put a picture that was taken about the same distance. It's about the same size of the belted kingfisher, just for you to compare. So we have from a very, very small one to a pretty big one, like the ringed kingfisher. And I tell you, if you like to photograph, if you like to watch kingfishers, here's the place to come. It's amazing how many kingfishers you can see in a day. You can see them with different sizes of fishes, sometimes just resting in the sun, in the shade, flying by. It's pretty amazing. All right, and for me, this is one of the most interesting birds of the Pantanal, one of my favorites. They go seasonally to the Pantanal. I think black skimmer, if I'm not wrong, it does occur in US, doesn't it?
Correct, yes.
In southern US.
We get along our southern coast.
Yeah. So black skimmers, they go to the Pantanal during the dry season, which is the season we use to do the trips with NetHab. They are looking for sandbars. While the water recedes, you have lots of sandbanks and even sand beach along the rivers, and they are looking for these sand areas for breeding. So generally what they do, this one it's sitting on a nest right now on this picture. So it's quite open. Everybody can see that they are nesting there, but they used to nest in groups, in big groups. In 2019, I took my family, my wife and my kids for the first time ever to the Pantanal. And I saw a very, very interesting scene of a jaguar walking among the black skimmers. They were all nesting at the time, and he was heavily attacked by the southern screamers. And the noise they made, they definitely warned the whole forest, the whole river area around them. It's amazing how they can just manage to survive right in the open. I'm telling you about jaguar, and it's not just jaguars. You have snakes, you have small mammals that can eat them, and they survive very well. And very interesting about this bird, I don't know if you noticed that the lower mandible, it's longer than the upper mandible, which is quite unusual. Actually, I don't know any other bird apart from skimmers that have this feature. So it's quite unusual. And this is very useful for them. This is their strategy to fish, as they have this longer lower mandible. What they do is they just fly skimming and try to touch to catch a fish. They just will collect the fish. And very interesting because they don't need their eyes to fish. So it's fairly common if you go out in a boat, it's very, very common to see them fishing at night. Very, very common. So it's quite special bird for me. I really like that. So this is a kind of weaver bird. It belongs to the family of the blackbirds. It's called the icterid, and they are known for the fantastic nest they can do. They have some really, really different calls. I chose this one. There are several different species of weaver birds in the Pantanal, but I chose this one because it's a very special one with a very great name. It's called the yellow-rumped cacique. You can easily see why it's called the yellow rump with these bright blue eyes. It's such an elegant bird. And cacique, it comes from the Latin name. The genus is called Cassicus. So this one was just making some repairs in the nest. Some of the species, they used to do colonial nests. So sometimes you have several birds nesting in the same tree. It's quite spectacular to see. And they have a very interesting strategy. You can see here in the picture that they always build the nest in the tip of the branch. They never build in the middle. This is a strategy against any predator, even a snake, a light one. If you go to the tip of the branch, probably it will bend that the snake will fall, for example. So this is a pretty interesting strategy. Whenever you find a weaver bird, just check it's going to be on the tip of a branch, a very flexible one. And can you imagine to build something like this using your beak? I'm not sure if I can do that using my hands or the right tools for that. And they only use the beak. And some of these nests, they last several different seasons, and they tend to go back to the same tree. Every year, you have the flooding season, they leave the Pantanal. When they come back, the same colony used to go back to the same tree that they nest before.
How long does it take them to build one of these?
Oof, that's a good question. I need to investigate that. But I would say, what, a few days, maybe a week, maybe more. It's quite hard to say. I don't know. I need to investigate that. It's lots of work, definitely. I can imagine to put just the first, just to start that. How do you just put that on the trees? Just fascinating. And check the one on the left. That's called the golden-winged cacique. Its nest is darker than the other's nest. There is one reason. This is probably the only nest from weaver birds that you can say this is from this species, from the golden-winged cacique. He used a filamentous fungus that grows in a specific kind of palm tree. And it's the only one among the weaver birds that use that. So that's why it's darker. So this filamentous fungus is very dark. It's black, actually. And I don't know why it's the only species that use that, but they are the only ones. And it's always like this very black, dark nest.
It's amazing.
Okay. So this is remember I told you when we saw the big river and the tributary, this is one of the birds that tend to be more in the tributaries. In rivers where the water flows slowly, where everything is more calm, where you have lots of floating vegetation. This is called the sun grebe. It's just one word, and this is not a grebe. It's not related with grebes at all. It has a very small head, like grebes, a very slender neck, And the main feature of this bird is the feet. This striped feet is just amazing, amazing. Another very, very interesting thing about this bird, I wish I can see that one day, is that they have lots of folds, skin folds under their wings. This is where they use to protect their chicks. And they can put the chicks under their wings to make short flights. It's a very, very special bird. Not very easy to see. Generally, they're quite shy, but sometimes you're lucky and you can see something like that. And so again, sun grebe is not a grebe. It has its own family, its own genus. It's probably
I love bird names. A grebe that's not a grebe. You know, I was actually laughing to myself earlier because, you know, you had the green kingfisher, which had a whole bunch of different colors, and the next kingfisher was one that was actually just green, but it had a different name. Yeah, bird names are fantastic. It's like that all over the world.
Absolutely.
Order of how they were discovered, or someone's maybe misunderstanding of the family groups, but it just sticks, doesn't it? I wonder what bird names would end up being if we just, now that we've cataloged most of them in the world, we just sat down and actually named them for, again, how much things would actually change. Yeah. I would call this the stripe-footed bird.
Yeah, that's a good name. So, as we were talking about names, here we go again. This bird is called the sun bittern, and it's not a bittern, not related with bitterns at all, not at all. So I used to call these two guys as the sunny guys, sun bittern and sun grebes. Sun bittern, it's a very interesting, it's a solitary bird. This picture you can see its habitat very well. They rarely go on water that's deeper than that. This is how far they go. So basically they're looking for insects, very small vertebrates, sometimes frogs. So they rarely go much further than that in the water. And they just keep wandering around. As soon as they see a prey, they just go, stay still and try to spear it. And this bird, whenever you flush one of these birds, when it opens its wings, it's just spectacular. It reminds a very fashion Chinese fan with all the, imagine all these stripes, these spots you're seeing, they just become a completely different thing. This is something I've been trying to photograph for years and years and years, and I'm failing miserably. But to see that, we have very, very good to see this. And I tell you, most of people, they always say this is one of the highlights when you see this bird being flushed or just flying away. It's quite spectacular to see. Okay, so this is for me one of the most elegant birds of the Pantanal. It's called the pied plover or pied lapwing. It remember that guy from the TV show Zorro? With its mask.
Sure, with the mask.
Yeah, and I think it's very elegant. Just this red eye ring gives such a special touch to the bird. And this bird also goes to the Pantanal for breeding. And like the skimmers, it chews the sandbars, the sandbanks to make the nest. Generally, they are in muddy areas or sand areas, but generally they nest in the sand areas. But different from the skimmers, you're gonna have like two couples in a big sandbar. So they like more privacy, to be more exclusive. And here's a picture so you can understand the size of the bird. And another characteristic which I learned like a couple of years ago about this bird is how brave they are. Look at that. There is this small cat behind them. It's one of the icons of the Pantanal, and they didn't run away. This is the only time in my life where I saw a bird that didn't fly away, anything, an animal that didn't move away from a jaguar. So they jaguar just passed away, and they will just stay there foraging. So apart from being a very exclusive bird in terms of housing, it's a brave bird, one of the bravest for sure.
Fred, I have to say I love this presentation because it's so focused. The jaguar is incidental to the plover.
It was just disturbing the photographers at the time, you know.
Yeah, I'm a big believer though. When we're on wildlife trips, if we're slowing down to pay attention to the little things and to appreciate smaller things and things that might be a little trickier to see, through the guidance, through your expertise, things like birds, and slowing down and appreciating them, you're bound to see other things that happen. Like the bigger animals are often what people are coming for, and they're so charismatic. And but it's a disservice, I think, to yourself as a traveler to just go looking for the big things. You spend time settling in, getting to know the environment the way that you do through the lens of birds. You're bound to see this other stuff as well. I really appreciate this slide.
Thank you. And jaguar is pretty animal as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's another tiny one. It's called the Colored Plover. I'm a big fan of plovers and waders. Well, one of my dreams is go to Alaska to see there is a wader festival in Alaska, which I heard a lot about it. But we have lots and lots of fantastic waders in Brazil as well. And I like any aquatic birds and this kind of thing. So this is Colored Plover, one of my favorite. This is in full breeding plumage. It's a fascinating bird, just absolutely amazing. Again, another bird that lives on sandbars in a pair during the breeding season. And when they are not breeding, this is very interesting. They use together in small numbers, sometimes 5, 6 birds, and they move away from the water. I've seen them in airstrips in some of the lodges you used to visit. You look there are 6 right in the middle of the airstrip, no water around, nothing, as long as they're not breeding. But once they're breeding, they're going to be in pairs and always close to the water. Very, very nice birds. Okay, and now let's go to the herons. Pantanal is full of herons and full of egrets. So it was pretty difficult to choose which one. So I think for me, these are the most special ones. This is called the boat-billed heron. And definitely if you look to its bill, it really looks like a boat upside down. Very special heron. They used to roost in groups in thick vegetation, apart from this individual that I just found in the open. No, just kidding, but they roost in big groups in thick vegetation. Generally, that's the best time to see them, when you find a roosting place. Generally, they don't fly away. But weirdly, at night, when they go hunting, they go alone. They just spread out, they separate, and every individual will go to a different area. One of my favorites, boat-billed heron. So this is a nocturnal, more active at night. And I think this is one of the most beautiful herons ever. I think it's, well, pictures sometimes they just don't make enough justice for what you can see in front of your eyes. This is called the Capped Heron. This is another bird that was in breeding plumage, so it has its bright, clean, butter colored, those very long head feathers, and this bluish and pinkish color in the bill. Generally, they live alone. They are shy. Eventually, you can get close to one. We used to see them very often. And these head feathers they use for display whenever they are doing the courtship. Males and females, they used to shake these feathers. It's quite spectacular to see. Not easy, but the bird we might see once there. It's a beauty, isn't it?
This is a stunning bird. Absolutely. The blue, you don't get a lot of different blues in nature. That's a stunning blue.
Yes, absolutely. And here, for me, it's the most beautiful heron in the world. And now you can say, wow, he's saying that for a brown bird, but this is an immature, this is a juvenile. You just can see that the top of the head is just getting slightly blue, it's changing. But one very nice feature about this bird is the length of the bill. It's pretty long. It's pretty long in comparison with the body size, compared with other egrets and herons. This is called the Agami Heron. And this is why I consider probably the most beautiful heron in the world. This is an adult. This is a full-grown adult with the breeding plumage as well, with this fluff feathers in the neck. Because of the length of the bill and the colors, the locals in the Pantanal, they used to call them as the hummingbird heron in a literal translation. But it's called Agami Heron because of its Latin name.
That is a stunning bird.
Isn't it? And very interesting about this heron, that this heron lives more in the forest areas, along the rivers, near the rivers, but more in the forest areas, not in the open. So what happened is when it floods, you have parts of the forest that can be flooded. So they used to stay there. And when the water starts to recede, that's when you have the best chance to see them, that they have to leave the forest to look for food. That's when you have the best chance to see them. And here, it's a very interesting behavior. This is a defense posture, how they can stretch their necks like this. Herons, egrets, they have a special adaptation in their spine, and they have a tendon that permits us to be so flexible. And also when they fly, that they make that S shape. It's due to this tendon. That's an adaptation in the spine. So they can be very flexible. And look the size of that. It's amazing. Whenever they see you, they just stretch their leg, their neck, trying to show that they are bigger than they really are. And here it's a close-up shot. Look at that. It's almost like a beard, these feathers on the. It's hard to describe the feeling whenever you see this bird. It's very, very special. And now, for us just to finish, I'll show you, this is probably the most iconic bird of the Pantanal. It's called the hyacinth macaw. It's world's largest parrot, the world's largest member of the parrot, macaws, and parakeets family. The largest population of this bird definitely is in the Pantanal. It used to be spread in other habitats, but now Pantanal concentrates 99% of its population. This bird, like 25 years ago, almost disappeared, not almost disappeared in the wild, but was critically endangered. And now the population is considerably vulnerable. After a 25 years project, the Hyacinth Macaw project, they're doing really, really, really well. And the population nowadays is estimated in something about 5,000 individuals in the wild. And why, apart from being the symbol, one of the symbols of the Pantanal, one thing I like, as you mentioned, blue. You don't see many blue in the wild, especially this shade of blue. It's just unbelievable. For me, macaws, they're always smiling. This is smiling on this one. It seems that they're always in a good mood. And another very interesting thing about this bird, they fly very low. They don't fly high up like other macaws and parrots. I don't know if there is an explanation for that, but generally we see them flying pretty low, which is a treat for the eyes whenever you see this bird in flight, as you can see here. And this is the last bird I'll show you. We're gonna do the part 2 of the birds of the Pantanal. There are more iconic birds to come. I think we are just in time now, just past a little bit. So I just would like to end. That's gonna be an introduction for the next one. So one of my favorite birds of the Pantanal. So please come and visit us in the Pantanal. I'm sure you're gonna love it. And I hope we're gonna get this kind of view when you come down here. Thank you very much, Kobe.
Yeah, magnificent. Thank you for sharing, Fred. And I mean, what a place to, even just to think that we have to split your presentation into 2 different components to see all the iconic birds that are there. And like you were saying, that's not even the jaguars, the caimans, and all of the other wonderful things you'll see down there. I'm ready. Let's go. I've been in my condo for too long during COVID. Let's do it. I'm sure some of our travelers feel that way as well. Kendall, I think you're behind the scenes there. Shall we field a few questions here with Fred?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some really great questions for you. I just want to remind everyone who's watching first, if you have questions today for Fred, you can submit those in your control panel under the questions field. And I absolutely agree with Colby. I'm always so amazed by the incredible variety of wildlife in this region. You could talk for hours on end. It's amazing, so thank you. Okay, here we go. First question, when is breeding season down here?
Starts in August, late August to early November. Nethead strip, we run from to late September. So if you come August and September, we have a chance to see lots of birds starting the breeding season. June, that's when we run the first trips. Birds, they start to get very active. In August, that's when the plumage is getting very beautiful and birds are singing more. But that's it, August and September. That's the breeding season.
Right.
Considering
Someone
the
wanted. Someone wanted to know when the rhea chicks hatch.
When?
Well,
rheas, they have a different season. It's not like the most of the birds. Rheas, I've seen it when it gets really dry. That's around June. You start to see lots of chicks. So rheas generally is a little bit before the breeding season of the other birds. So June, July, that's when you see most of the rhea chicks.
And speaking of rheas, there's a couple questions here about what the chicks eat. How do they get fed?
Insects, mainly insects. Rheas, they mainly feed on insects. So rhea, it's a pretty, how can I say? They are shy, but they don't care to live near humans as long as they can take advantage of it. One of the things they do whenever you have crops and people just do the harvest, after that, it's a great place to look for insects. The picture I showed here with the chicks, they were in a crop that was recently harvested. So basically, they're looking for insects. They just spend the day walking around and trying to find insects, which is quite, I would say, easy in the Pantanal to find insects.
White woodpeckers, where do they make their homes?
Tree holes, like most of the other species of other woodpecker species, but generally they don't choose a forest area to do that. They just find a tree, a dead tree in the middle of an open field. That's where they used to do their nests. The tree holes, basically.
Does the bat falcon fly at dusk and at night to feed?
Mainly at dusk. They are very active very early in the morning or in the dusk. That's the time you see them more active. I've been honest, I've never seen one hunting at night, never.
How big is the black vulture?
How big? Let me give you the exact measure of it. It's, let me give you the, well, you know, so many numbers. Well, it has 25 inches. And a king vulture, it has about 30 inches. There is a small difference between male and females, but the average is like 25 inches for a black and about 30 inches for a king vulture.
Wow, that's incredible. And speaking of king vultures, there was someone wondering if the females have the same coloration or if they're more dull in color.
During the breeding season, pretty much the same coloration, not very different. Both male and females get very, how do you say, exuberant. You have this word.
Yes. So how do you tell the difference between males and females if they're so similarly colored?
Oof, it's just like, there is no morphological, well, there is, they are male and females, of course there is, but nothing that's something you can see and say, oh, that's a male and that's a female. Maybe because of the one that we saw, it was a male because of the chest. Females, that naked part on the chest doesn't show up very well.
Someone here is asking about kingfishers and if all kingfishers smash up the fish they eat so they can eat the flesh.
Yeah, and it's quite spectacular to see. It's amazing the size of the fish they can catch. In Pantanal, we have lots of piranhas. And it's not uncommon to see like a ringed kingfisher that it's about the size of your belted kingfisher catching piranhas, and sometimes the piranha it's about their size. So sometimes you spend 10 minutes just watching them, just trying to mash the fish and one side to the other, and then they turn around, spear again, and mash again. But sometimes you just get some really small fish, just swallow the whole thing. But it's common to see them mashing the fish.
Do jaguars ever eat birds or bird eggs?
Ooh. Birds, I've seen them eating birds. I saw a very interesting scene that the jaguar killed a heron. But before it killed the heron just bit him right in the face. And after that, the heron gone. But it's quite unusual to see that. The thing is, Pantanal has so much food for the jaguars that they feed mainly on capybaras, which it's a big rodent that lives in the Pantanal, always near water, and caimans. And both are quite easy prey for them. So I think they don't get really bothered about birds. I think if they have to, if it's like the only option they have for a while, they will go for a bird. But I think it's much easier for them to catch capybaras and caimans.
Mm-hmm. So you were talking about all of the different nests with the weavers. Someone has a question about the cassock bird nests. Do they last from one year to the next, or do they rebuild nests every year?
Generally, if they find the nest in good condition, they're going to use the same nest. What happens normally is they just repair in the same nest that they used the year before. Of course, if you have a storm, a strong wind that will destroy the whole thing, they will have to start from zero. And I'm sure that this is something very interesting about birds, not birds, some mammals, they do that. They have a way to measure how much energy they have to spend on doing something. I learned that when I saw a parrot once eating a fruit, and it dropped like 95% of the fruit. And I was with a researcher. This is an American researcher that lives in Brazil. And I asked him, why the bird does that? He said, well, Fred, they have to calculate how much energy they will spend on doing that. Does it worth doing one from zero, or just to rebuild just to make a small repair in the nest? So the fruit example was, according to this guy, whenever they buy the fruit, they can feel if there is enough energy for them, and if it's worth keep spending energy to open the fruit, or just leave it and grab another one. So I believe must be something, the same thing with nests and other behaviors, but especially nests and food. I believe that.
Yeah, makes absolute sense. Okay, final question today, because we are at the top of the hour. Someone here is just wondering what kind of camera and lenses you would need to get great photos of all these birds at distances and while they're flying.
Well, especially the birds in flight. Well, I have a lens from Sigma. Mine is 150 to 500, and I use a Canon, a 70D, which is a pretty basic model, but it works really well. For example, for this picture here, the last one, just use a high speed, a bit of lucky, and 1,000 times try, and it worked. But basically, I think if you go to the Pantanal, nowadays there are several lenses from Canon or from Nikon, and nowadays you even have this mirrorless camera that with even more powerful lenses. If you have something between 100 and a 400, you might be very happy there. You can do a lot. And I wouldn't recommend like just having a fixed 600 millimeters lens, because sometimes you get so close to the animals that you need 100 or 200. You need to be away from them. So if you have something that gives you more possibilities, like a variation of lens, 100 to 400, that's a good idea.
All right, great. Well, I'm going to call it there with questions. Thank you so much, gentlemen. This was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to your next presentation, Fred. That will be in a couple weeks. I'm going to hand it back over to both of you for any closing comments you'd like to make. And we'll start with Fred.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for NetHab for the opportunity to do this presentation here. And not only for this, I would like to do this public thank you for everything you've been doing during these challenging times we're crossing. It's been very important for us. And thanks for the opportunity. I'm really honored to be working with you. And I can't wait to the NetHab guests to come down to Brazil and show some of the birds and our mammals and reptiles and our wildlife. And thanks a lot, Kobe, for the support. Thank you very much. And thanks, Kendall.
It's been a pleasure, Fred. I learned a lot from you today. We all appreciate you being here and sharing your hard-earned expertise. And We get to see the 1 out of the 1,000 pictures of the birds that you've taken. So for curating all those for us as well. And of course, thanks to everybody for participating today. You know, I think I can say from the guiding team, these things are so much fun for us, and to be able to connect with you, our travelers here, and share what we're also passionate about in lieu of being able to travel, it's pretty amazing. So thank you all for being here.
Great. Thanks again, gentlemen. And Colby, thanks again for filling in for Annie. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. Be sure to join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. We did record today's presentation, and we'll have the replay available on our website soon. And with that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.